Kurtzpel, a new free-to-play action MMO with a focus on PvP. As you can see from the footage on screen, Kurtzpel is an anime-inspired action MMO. It's developed by COG, most known for another free-to-play MMO by the name of Elsword. The art style is fairly polished, even opening with a decently high-quality 2D anime cutscene. The main loop of gameplay involves taking on PvE and PvP missions to complete them and earn currency, rank up in PvP, and increase your affinity with the NPCs present in the game. As you make your way through the first few missions and unlock the game's 4 classes, you'll meet all the game's NPCs. These essentially serve as your progression system, giving you new gear and abilities as you level up your affinity with them by talking to them after clearing missions if they show up. Here lies one of the game's first weird issues. You're only allowed to track one of the many NPCs at a time, and you can't change which one you're tracking whenever you want. The way NPC tracking works is that once you've started tracking one of them, their names will appear on the missions when you're selecting one. If you choose these missions, there's a chance that that specific NPC will show up when you complete it. There's never a guarantee that an NPC will show up when you clear a mission, but if one does show up, that one is guaranteed. When choosing missions that don't have NPCs' names on them, it seems to be random, but I could be wrong about that. This seemed like an unnecessary way of obscuring progression to me. I didn't understand why I couldn't just see where each NPC would be so that I could focus on the one I want. Tracking them let me focus on one, but every once in a while you run out of missions with that NPC on it, so you just have to spam random missions and hope they come back. Since we're starting to talk about missions, let's get into the combat a little bit. In combat, each class has 3 ability actions with cooldowns and a mana cost, a few combos done by executing basic commands in different sequences, a super move that you can use when you've sustained enough damage, and a dodge and swap class action. Once you've unlocked them, you're able to select from 2 of the 4 classes at once that you're able to swap between mid-fight, and even mid-combo if you're good. This adds a lot to the otherwise simple single-class combat. Having 2 classes gives you some mix and match variety and lets you have different tools for different situations, as there are 2 ranged and 2 melee classes in the game at time of writing. The one other notable combat mechanic is the break meter. This is only present in PvE missions and allows you to essentially stun the boss for different amounts of time, depending on the enemy. This can be important if you need to revive a teammate or deal a lot of damage. This plays into the class system well, as it's pretty clear that the melee classes are better at taking down the break meter, while the ranged classes seem to be better at dealing damage overall. I found this to be a fairly well implemented mechanic. Overall, the combat is arguably one of the best parts of the game, and can definitely be satisfying at times. Now that we've covered the combat, let's dive into PvE. For me, this was the area that I spent the most time in, as I generally prefer PvE over PvP in MMO games. Sadly, the PvE in this game is pretty lacking. There are very few PvE missions, instead hinging on higher difficulties for variety, rather than variety of enemies. I may be slightly off, but I believe there are literally 12 PvE encounters in the entire game, and you do all of them on their easiest difficulty to unlock the classes at the start of the game. So by the time you've got all the classes unlocked, which only takes about an hour, you've already seen almost every PvE encounter. And you're going to be doing those same 12 missions over and over to grind for rep. There are higher difficulties, but from what I can tell, those don't largely change the encounter apart from damage taken. So all it really does is make you play safe, as on difficulties like Very Hard or Grand Chase, they're doing the same mechanics, except you're more likely to get 100% comboed or one-shot. In addition, the rewards for PvE are very lacking, if not non-existent. As I said before, almost all the rewards you get are from reputation levels with the NPCs that you increase by completing missions. While it does give you gear, here's the thing. No gear in this game for any one slot is better than any other piece of gear. Every sword has the same damage ranges and upgrade levels, every top has the same damage ranges and upgrade levels, etc, etc. As far as I'm aware, even the accessory slot pieces have the same sets of selectable stat buffs, though at least with those you're able to choose between a few to diversify your build a bit. This makes any form of exciting PvE gear progression essentially non-existent, unless you really love grinding for cosmetics. I believe I know the reason why this is in the game. It's for PvP balance. And while I do agree that it's balanced, I also personally find that extremely boring. In addition, it takes a very long time to grind those reputations up to even get your first new weapon. It took me almost 5 hours to get one cosmetic weapon change, which was half of the time I spent on the game. After I got that sword, I had no idea what I should have been doing in terms of PvE. I couldn't figure out what the game actually wanted me to do other than mindlessly try to max out my rep and go for the 1% to 5% drop chance accessory slot items that can drop from every PvE mission. So at that point, it just felt like I was grinding for nothing. The only other real form of progression you get from doing PvE missions is leveling up your abilities' affinity levels so that they're slightly stronger, which you do literally by just playing the game. There is some variety with the class abilities, since you unlock more to interchange with your main 3 when leveling up those NPCs' affinity, but it's hardly an involved process, and it's not like the ability fundamentally changes when its affinity goes up, it just gets a stat increase. With the repeating missions and low % gear drops you're encouraged to grind for, it just makes the game feel like poverty anime Warframe. And like, if you're gonna play a shitty version of Warframe, you may as well just go play Warframe. because that game is incredible and has amazing PvE gear progression and a ton of level variety. So what about PvP? It certainly seems like the focus of the game, with the game going as far as displaying your PvP rank in the hub world where you select missions. Truthfully, I had a strange experience with PvP in this game. It's probably partially because I never play PvP in these games, but I really tried to give it an honest shot here. While it can be fun at times, the game largely doesn't teach you the skills you need to succeed in PvP, or even really point you in the right direction. The game's tutorial essentially teaches you what buttons you can press, but that's about it. I know I could have spent time in the game's practice arena, but it wasn't something I personally wanted to invest my time in. I know that surely affected my PvP experience, but I digress. When I was starting out in PvP, I wasn't able to get anything done. I would just be comboed to death or get lucky with a good teammate and win. I didn't really feel like I knew what I should have been doing to be successful in PvP. I will say that the game's stun system is brutal, and it is very possible to be stun locked and 100% comboed, which obviously isn't very fun for the person getting tossed. However, it's extremely satisfying when you do it to someone else, so I guess in that sense it goes both ways. I also realized a bit later into my playtime that some of the other abilities were definitely better for PvP, such as abilities that could slow or stop other players from moving. Once I started to experiment with the different abilities and played with a friend, PvP was a lot more enjoyable. But I still found myself getting destroyed without really knowing what to do about it, so I guess that was still a bit of a struggle. Here's my issue though. There are no direct rewards for PvP either, other than your rank. So unless you really love climbing the leaderboards, there's no incentive to do PvP over PvE. The NPCs do appear after PvP missions so that you can still raise your rep with them, but that's literally it. So what do I think of this game overall? While I do think they're off to a great start with the combat, I believe they need to look at their reward system and make it more enticing to put time into their modes. They've already made it hard for themselves with gear that is essentially all the same stat-wise, but they need to have some sort of incentive for people to keep playing. If you're thinking of playing this game, I would say either wait until there's a bit more content in terms of PvE, or if you're really interested in PvP, try the game out to test the combat and see how you like it. This is an early access game after all, so they've got plenty of time to fix it up and add things, but I think right now the game just feels too bare bones for me to encourage people to put a significant amount of time into it. Thanks for watching. Check out my Twitter and my Twitch, links are in the description. You can also check out my Patreon in the description if you're interested in supporting my content. Let me know what you think of this format. I'd like to try it out on a few other free-to-play games, and I had a lot of fun making this. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.